We're going to be hearing in just a moment about balancing destination site and distributed content strategies. And we touched on this yesterday, this idea that the source of traffic increasingly is not people going to a homepage and then navigating through a site. It's people coming to us through content that's out there in social networks. To tell us how that works and to give us some idea of what lessons we can learn from it, we have the Chief Executive and co-founder of Parsely in the USA, Sachin Kamdar.
All right, hello everybody, and good morning. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the homepage and distributed content. Before I get started, quick poll here. If you had a fixed amount of resources, say $1 million to spend, and you wanted to spend it on one area, would you pick social or distributed content, or would you pick the homepage? Let's get a raise of hands for social. All right, let's get a raise of hands for the homepage. Not many. And let's get a raise of hands for, I don't know why, that's why I'm at this session. Okay, cool. So I hope I can answer some of that with you guys here. First, just a little bit about Parsely. We're an analytics company. We're built around content. And really what we try to do is pick up on all the meaningful metrics that are happening with your content, with your audience, and marry that in a way that makes the data easily accessible. We do that for a variety of different people at your organization. So it could be your editorial team, your managers, your analysts, product teams, or even data scientists and data engineering teams. And here is a quick screenshot of what Parsely looks like in a single screen. But let's talk about the data that I'm going to share with you guys today and how that's relevant to distributed content and social. So we work with about 700 premier content sites across the world. We're looking at about 50 billion page views per events tracked per month, about 600 million deduped visitors, lots and lots of data. And what we do with that data is not just give it back to our individual customers so that they can understand what's going on with their sites, but we actually aggregate that data up too. And about once a quarter or once every 2 quarters, we produce what we call authority reports. These are free reports that you can download if you go to parsely.com/authority. There are about a dozen of them that are covering a bunch of different things, ranging from what's the average lifespan of an article to what type of content is the most efficient that we see across our network. But one of the things that we regularly report on is referral traffic. So we're looking month over month since about 2013 how referral traffic has changed over time. Not surprisingly to anybody here, at around 2015, we saw social really taking off, and in particular, Facebook. That was the first time, I think it was in July of 2015, where we saw Facebook actually beating out Google as the largest source of referral traffic for publishers. This was also the time, if some people remember, where the New York Times produced their insider report, and they basically said that over the last 2 years, their homepage traffic had declined by 50%. So this is a change in the way that people are consuming news, where it's less about them finding the things that they want, and it's more about those things finding them wherever they are, whether that be on the site itself, or through social, or through search, or even through other platforms now that we're seeing emerge. As of today, Facebook continues to be the top driver of traffic that we see across the Parsely network, representing about 40% of overall external traffic. But just because their increase doesn't mean that there hasn't been a strong showing of internal traffic. So that's not referenced in this graph here, but internal traffic is still a big driver of traffic overall. So people coming to your homepage and then going to other places on your site. The challenge with the homepage right now and internal traffic overall is that there is a really wide range of diversity, which you can see in this graph here. So it might be hard to read, but on the left-hand side, what you're seeing is publishers that are relying on social and search referrals. And then on the right-hand side, you're seeing publishers that are relying on kind of homepage traffic as the main driver. So obviously, that's heavily weighted towards the search and social side, but what that doesn't show is the fact that there is still about 10% of overall traffic that's driven from the homepage. With those sites that have really strong homepage traffic overall, that can edge up to 50% of their overall traffic. So if you have an audience that is coming to your homepage and they're regularly visiting it, that can make up a large portion of what you're seeing happening overall. So we can get a little bit more data on this here when we think about audience loyalty and conversions. So like I said, about 11% of referrals to posts come from the homepage. 80% of those homepage visitors are returning visitors. So these are people that have been to your site at least once before, as we measure it in the past month. 2 times the number of these visits come from desktop as it does from mobile. Another really important thing when you're thinking about homepage design, it's actually a little bit more important that you think about the desktop than you do for mobile, because that's where a lot of the traffic is coming from that we see across the Parsely network. 30 seconds is how much we see people spending on the homepage. That might not seem like a lot relative to how much time somebody would spend on an individual article, but it actually is a meaningful amount of time when you're thinking about the fact that they're not consuming content really. What they're doing on the homepage is trying to find content. And if you sit with yourself, look at your homepage and spend, just count down from 30, you'll recognize how much time that actually is that somebody is dedicating towards finding the content that they want. And then, like I said before, we see about a 10 to 50% conversion rate for links on the homepage. So a wide range there where you could have some of the sites that have a very loyal audience converting 50% of the time to clicking on an article when they visit a homepage. So one of the things that I want to talk about here is how the homepage can actually impact what's happening on social. And how we can use the homepage traffic to inform our social strategies. So this is actually one of the authority reports that we put out. You can download the full report. There's more information than what you're going to see here today. But basically what we did in this report is we looked at about 20,500 articles, and we basically said, let's look at what happens to those articles when they reach about social referrals equivalent to 500. So about 500 views coming from social. And let's classify those articles in 3 different ways: social positive, social negative, and social neutral. What you're seeing right here is an example of a social negative, the social negative articles, where you can see about a third of the social referrals are coming a third of the referrals overall are coming from social relative to the homepage. So this is something where it's not really generating a lot of social traffic and is mostly eaten up by homepage overall. This is an example of what it looks like when you have an evenly mixed referral. So once it hits about 500 page views to these articles, you can see that it's almost evenly distributed between social and the homepage. And this, again, is about a third to 2/3 of the referrals are coming from social relative to the overall traffic. What's really interesting, though, is when you get to those articles that are social positive. So that's where you see 2/3 or greater of the referrals coming from social traffic overall. And what this actually says to us is that this is a post that has a longevity on social. It has a really high likelihood, a really high confidence of actually getting to 10,000 views, mostly social. So what we have worked with some of our customers around from this data is actually experimenting with it. If you see that within the first 500 views, you get 2/3 or more of your traffic coming from social, that can be a really good indicator that that's something that could actually take off on social. That's something that could be a really good indicator of how you can actually leverage the homepage to inform your distributed content strategy, where you're taking that article as almost a signal or experiment on your homepage, and you're saying, hey, now let's promote that on these other platforms because we see that it's getting the type of traffic that we want organically. This is something that's turned out to work really well for a lot of our customers that have tried this out, where they use the homepage not just as a destination site, but they use it as a mechanism to understand what could potentially go viral. And I think that this can apply for a lot of similar sites to what we measure, where you're seeing that within a 500 page view limit, if you're getting 2/3 or more of your traffic from social, that's a good indicator that this thing could take off. Another aspect of this is combining that with homepage design. So one of the important things to kind of recognize is where is your traffic actually going to click on when they visit your homepage, and how can we make sure that we're putting those pieces of content that, if we have an inclination to drive social, in the right places so that they're getting the most optimal clicks possible. So here's how it basically breaks down if you're thinking about homepage design and what we see across the Parsely network. You're going to get, in terms of all clicks on the homepage, 5 to 20% of those clicks, it's a large range, but 5 to 20% of those clicks are going to go towards the top slots. You're going to see about 15 to 50 clicks coming from above the fold. 80% clicks or fewer are coming in the second fold, and 90% fewer clicks than that are coming in the third fold. So really, it's not surprisingly the kind of first fold that's driving a lot of the clicks on your site. There is another alternative that you can have to thinking about your homepage and sites, and one of our customers, Slate.com, did this, where instead of actually thinking about your site as having kind of folds, let's just treat it as a stream of content. So they migrated their site from a kind of top section, middle section, bottom section, to being infinite scroll overall, so that when you look at an article on a homepage or an article page, you can continually scroll. And what they saw is that their page views per visitor actually increased from about 3 to 3.5 page views, which is a pretty good increase just by changing the design of the site. So you can think about the site as it is currently and thinking about where you can place your content to get the most clicks, or you can think about how you want to potentially change that to create a more seamless experience, whether that be through infinite scroll or other mechanisms overall. It's important to combine that also with how your people are at your organization, your editorial team, your content team, your audience development team is actually interfacing with article data also. So they need to be able to understand very quickly where those 500 clicks to that article is coming from. So real-time data becomes important when you're thinking about articles on the homepage, and then how you can promote those given the kind of different signals that you're seeing at the time. Other things that we kind of offer to help out with this is the Parsely API too. So that's the way to get content recommendations. The NewYorker.com uses this to power content recommendations on their site. And there are other ways that you can actually personalize based on what your inclinations are, whether that be to drive loyalty, whether that be to drive social, whether that be to drive some other mechanism. It's important to recognize that you don't just have to do it manually. You can also do this in an automated fashion. And then the last thing is really taking ownership of your data. One of the important things that we kind of recognize through this process is that it's really important to think about your data not just through dashboards and tools, but think about it from an analysis perspective and an analytics perspective. So what I mean by that is that mechanism of us figuring out that, you know, if a post is getting 2/3 or more of its traffic within the first 500 views, as a signal for it being viral coming from the homepage, was something that we had to put work and effort into doing. We had a theory, we applied our own expertise towards it, and we came up with this pretty good mechanism that's played out pretty well for our customers. But that should be something that everybody in here is doing with their own teams, their own analytics teams, their own analytics departments, where you're going beyond the bounds of what your tools are doing to actually take ownership of your data and explore and experiment with different theories and process that you have related to it. So that is about it with Parsely. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have relative to what I presented today or anything about analytics.
Thanks very much for that. And let's see if we have any questions from the audience first. And let me start off with, are you seeing the data that's coming out of your system already influencing the way homepages are designed and the way people think about their content and its relationship to the wider world? Is that already directing decision making?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's like two mechanisms to it. So there's a really good feedback loop with real-time data where you're seeing what's happening right now. You can feed that back into the decision-making process of what to promote and where to promote it. I think one of the other aspects of it is really taking that longitudinal look too. So focusing on the historical data and seeing how has your homepage changed over time. Does it actually match what we see as a network for Parsely? Is there an advantage that you have that the general network trend doesn't, or is there something that you need to catch up on? And so that can be a really important thing to do, is comparing what you see local to kind of the network trends that we're seeing across Parsely.
Okay. So to sort of conclude, what you seem to be telling us, it's not quite the divide you suggested at the beginning between it's either the homepage or social media. It's the two need to work together, and we need to regard both of them as important.
The one thing that it's important to recognize is that users have a flow to how they're experiencing your content. They're not just social, they're not just homepage. Likely they're going to be both. And so it's important to recognize the mechanism of how they might experience something on social or on your homepage. They might be a social influencer, they promote it out on social, and all of a sudden you have a post that's taking off there.
Okay. Now, in a moment, we're going to have a look at what German publishers thought about this issue of social as publisher's enemy or best friend, and find out what you think. But in the meantime, can I ask you please to thank Sachin? Thank you.
Thank you.